is Mr. C. Good morning, Mr. C.
Good morning, Zibby. Good morning, Bugbemi. Welcome to the show and good morning, Lagos.
All right, as always, we love it when you're a part of the conversation. The WhatsApp number to send your messages to is 0809 440 981. And of course, you could tweet at smooth981. The hashtag is freshly pressed 981. We're starting from the Premium Times. Transportation crisis. Nigerian university considers virtual classes. The management of the University of Ilorin has said it's considering opting for virtual classes for students, and this is following the transportation challenges that are being faced by staff and students of the institution. Now, there have been pictures and videos of stranded students in long queues waiting for commercial vehicles to actually convey them from town to the university, and these made the rounds on social media this week.
Yes, Zibby. So thank you. So we were inundated with pictures and social media comments about the traffic situation at the University of Ilorin. Now we've seen images of students being trapped in traffic for considerably long periods of time, and the decision of the university to consider virtual classes is good, but I would have thought they would have gone a step further by immediately starting them. Because let's not forget that since the advent of COVID, we've had a we've had a greater increase in the use of virtual meeting apps
Mm.
for business, for education, and for other purposes. And those apps have reduced the need to meet physically and have greatly enhanced remote work. Having said that, I have a question. I'm intrigued because although I didn't go to a Nigerian university, I've been to a few physically to visit, and I have noticed that the ones I have visited have multiple entrances and exits. So you probably hear first gate, second gate, third gate. Now, if a flyover is being constructed by the tanker, by the University Road tanker, which I believe is the main gate, is there another gate through which the students and staff can access the university? If there's none, then that's a serious then that's an issue that needs to be considered. Even for the purposes of safety, why do
Mm-hmm.
you have only one means of entrance and exit? But I do not want to believe that there's only one way of entering or leaving the school because this is a federal school. I think it was built in the 70s, if I'm not mistaken. And the Nigerian universities that were built around that time, to a large extent, followed the same template. So maybe they should also explore the use of the other gates and also start the use of virtual apps so that they can reduce the pain and suffering that both employees and students are going through.
Right. And let's move on to Punch. World Bank downgrades Nigeria's economic growth projection. World Bank has again lowered its growth projection for the Nigerian economy, and it's citing a weakened oil sector as its primary reason. This was contained in the bank's Global Economic Prospects report that was published just this Tuesday. Now, according to that projection, Nigeria's economy will further decelerate to 2.9% in 2023, and it's not expected to record any growth in 2024. Bubemi?
No, no. So I'll take it. So this is very sad news, and it comes on the back of a previous downgrade. So 3 weeks ago, the World Bank had reduced its projection for Nigeria's growth in the economy from 3.8% to 3.1%. That was 3 weeks ago. So 3 weeks ago was sometime in December.
Mm.
Now they've had cause to revisit that projection and they've reduced it even further to 2.9%. And they've cited a number of reasons for that, and it includes low oil output. Now, from the greater part of 2022, what we did witness was that daily oil production was quite low. But from the fourth quarter, from October, November, December, we started to see an increase in the daily production, and we got to about 1.1, 1.2 million barrels, I think, in December. Then we also have the insecurity that has continued to plague and ravage the land. We have petrol subsidies, which have remained burdensome and worrying. Then we have the forex scarcity, among others, which is hampering Nigeria's growth. When you add to the mix the fact that inflation finished at a record high 21.4, 21.7% last year, this is very disturbing news. And to think that in 2024, they're not even projecting any growth. Now, this doesn't tally with what the candidates have been telling us so far, because they've been telling us under their administrations, if elected, the economy will recover, the economy will grow. So it's a question for presidential aspirants to consider. It's a question for them to start answering, and we should get them to respond to this report that this is what the World Bank is projecting. Now, in line with your plans, your aspirations, your manifestos, where is the disconnect? Where's the connect? And how do you intend to avoid this situation that the World Bank is projecting? Now, we must also not forget that there are structural problems that need to be addressed. And some of these structural problems need the right political will. For example, the issue of the petrol subsidies. It is the right political will that will end that regime. But nobody wants to look bad. But the truth of the matter is, it has to go. Now, am I advocating for an immediate end to the subsidy? No, because I do not believe Nigerians and the economy will be able to take the full hit at once. The phased removal of the program will be a lot better. Then the forex scarcity, the forex regime, that also requires political will. Harmonize the rates, or make sure that the differential between the official rate and the parallel rate is not more than 8% or 10%. That then removes the incentive for the parallel market to grow. But again, we wait for the aspirants and we hope that they've started crunching the numbers, they started talking to their experts, and that if any of them is duly elected come May 29th, that we will start to witness the sort of growth we truly deserve.
Right, I've got a few messages coming through. This one is from Cisco Delgado, and he says, good morning, Zibby and Mr. C. Virtual classes are not a new method of teaching. I did my master's degree virtually, and very soon attending university education will all be virtual. Okay, and let's move on to the next story, and this one is from Business Day. Nigerian passports among 20 worst to hold in 2023. Now, according to the Henley Passport Index, which is an authoritative ranking of all the world's passports according to the number of destinations that holders can access without a prior visa, Nigeria is not sitting very pretty at 97 among 109 places. Now, other countries with not so great passports include Eritrea, with access to 44 destinations, South Sudan, Iran, Congo, Lebanon, Sri Lanka, and Iraq with 29 destinations, and Afghanistan with 27 destinations bring up that list from the rear.
Okay, so the Henley Passport Index, like you had said, basically ranks access passports of countries on the basis of whether the citizens can access visa-free travel or visa on arrival at the destinations. And if we look back at some of the information, we'd realize that Nigeria has constantly been falling on the index. So within the last 17 years, we've fallen about 38 places, and this is quite worrying. So one of the things, or rather, some of the things that the Passport Index looks at to determine passport strength are things like GDP, national income, for example. And if we look at the countries that are high up on the list, we'll find out that they have a higher GDP than Nigeria does. There's also security issues, for example, as well. So if we look at that index as well, if we notice the countries that we're at the bottom with, a lot of them have security issues: Eritrea, Afghanistan, and basically it just makes sense because people who are going to travel will be very concerned about their safety in terms of when they land in those places. So will they be looking to go to those places? And typically people would travel for business reasons or pleasure. Those are like the two top reasons. And so that also brings us to opportunities as well. So What kind of opportunities do people see there? And when they see those opportunities, do the challenges that they anticipate trump those opportunities such that they are willing to take the risk, or do they decide not to embark on those opportunities based on the potential risks that they can see? So I think this calls for us as a country, and also the federal government and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, to take a look into. So now, some of these things are not things, obviously, that we're going to be able to address overnight, but then we need a more deliberate attempt to make our country more attractive to other people. When we also consider the fact that, a lot of people who are traveling from Nigeria, based on the fact that, we're in a region of a lower national income, are potentially looking to go to other countries, not necessarily for business or pleasure, but also to settle there. It places us on the wrong side of the balance of power, because when we go to other countries, when we settle, we're going to place a resource on their social security, their facilities, and that's not attractive to them. So those are sort of the things that we also need to look at as a people.
Do you think in any way perhaps the citizens have a role to play in this? I mean, we're looking at Japan, which is said to have the most powerful passport, 193 countries visa free or visa on arrival. And we've seen Japanese citizens being applauded for the conduct that they've displayed when they've been to other countries. Do you think in some way that plays a role?
Definitely. So one thing I always say is perception is key. And in terms of talking about perception, how do we as the citizens perceive our country, for example? So a lot of people may not necessarily be happy, and to be honest, no citizen in any country is happy. But then how do we project our opinion about the country? Because that also influences what people see about us. So thankfully, there are a lot of optics that we've been able to manage in terms of, for example, the entertainment industry. That when people see our artists, for example, or watch our movies and our films, they have a more positive perception about our country. So that should help.
Okay, just very quickly, 30 seconds. So the countries that are very powerful, or seem to be very powerful, have been able to link economic success to foreign policy. But over here, there seems to be a disconnect. We seem to be working at cross purposes. So Bugbemi rightly said, our entertainment sector seems to be projecting Nigeria in a positive light. But for whatever reason, our foreign policy isn't being latched onto that. And our economic fortunes haven't exactly been the best lately. So until we're able to decide what exactly is our foreign policy to start with, what are we projecting to do? Because again, what is the value of a Nigerian life? In all these countries you've mentioned, the powerful countries at the top of the Henley Index, they value the citizens. And it doesn't help the fact that when some Nigerians do travel abroad, they misbehave, they're fighting, they're involved in all forms of violence. And that is why currently Nigerians do not get visas to Dubai. Because the cults that have gone there, like the Black Axe and the AM Boys, have continued to fight. And just last night, busloads of Nigerian men who had illegally overstayed or had no papers were being bussed to the airport. They're being deported to Nigeria. So yes, I agree with you that the attitude of the citizens too is very key. But above all, the government must have a coherent foreign policy which is tied to economic success.
Okay, I've got a message coming through on WhatsApp. This one is from Ade, and he says, Mr. C, I graduated from University of Ilorin in 2000. The school has a permanent site located in the outskirts of town, and from that gate to the school is another 15 to 20 minutes drive. It's like a resort. Virtual classes with fuel crisis, power issues, hoping the students will have fuel to power their equipment to attend those classes. It's just a tough one for students. Right, you can send your messages through. The WhatsApp number is 0809 444 0981, and you can also tweet at smooth981. Just trying to pull up this message from Yinka Bolu. It says, I'm sorry, it was the federal government or economic success responsible for the UAE creating the current visa barrier. In the UK, you have Nigerians having Owambe parties and closing the roads in Woolwich. Please, let's share the blames across the board. Okay, and we're moving on to this day. CBN threatens to sanction banks over failure to load ATMs with new banknotes. Now, the Central Bank of Nigeria is warning that it will penalize banks that fail to comply with its directive to dispense the newly redesigned 200, 500, and 1,000 naira notes through their automated teller machines, ATMs. Now, this warning was issued yesterday by the CBN. And also in Lagos, the Apex Bank urged others to comply with the directive to load the ATMs with the new notes in order to ensure that they are being circulated widely.
Okay, so thank you, Zibby. So we note what the CBN is saying, but then we must place it side by side with what the banks are saying. Now, a number of the banks through their branches continue to maintain that they do not get a sufficient quantity of the new notes. So they're forced to mix and match the old notes with the new notes. Now, here's the CBN saying you must load all your automated teller machines with the new notes. They're only going to do that if they have the new notes. So it's one thing for the CBN to say we have the right quantity of the new notes. That right quantity, is it being given to the banks as and when they need it? Because until the banks are in full possession of the right quantity of new naira notes, they're not going to be loaded onto the ATMs. And this threat of sanctions, you've just given a directive. Clearly, there must be some stipulated time period. Why not wait for the time period to elapse before you begin this business of sanctions? And then I did read a report where a banker off the record was saying that some of the automated teller machines need to be reconfigured to take the new notes. And that will take some time. Again, what is the inordinate rush towards January 31st? The UK has introduced new notes carrying the portrait of the new king. Will those notes become legal tender in 2024? Where are we rushing to? What's the plan?
But isn't it obvious why the CBN put this policy in place?
So the official account is to deter kidnapping. Excuse me. Whoever is determined to kidnap will kidnap whether you have 10 new notes or 50 new notes, because that's what he set out to do. So you change the new notes, you change the old notes, they no longer become legal tender, you have new notes. How exactly does that stop kidnapping? How does that stop money laundering? I wish we would think beyond the obvious. We will think outside the box. Changing your notes cannot stop kidnapping. I'm sorry. Let's see if the deadline will not be extended, because this 31st of January deadline is looking very interesting. So we'll continue to watch this space and we'll see whether less than 3 weeks to a major election, you change your naira notes.
And coming to what you said about bankers off the record talking about how the cash machines need to be reconfigured. Now, the CBN is also saying that it's now ordering banks to stop dispensing the new currency notes over the counter. So which means it's been available over the counter, and which comes to what you're saying. Perhaps the machines are just not built.
Okay. Now, let me even address that directive. The CBN is saying, stop loading the new notes. Excuse me, the new notes are still legal tender. On what basis are you stopping them from loading the ATMs with the old notes? Are the new notes insufficient? Have you seen the 1,000 naira notes?
I have not.
Have you seen the 500?
I have not.
Have you seen the 200?
It's like gold at this point. I haven't seen it.
So what exactly is going on? The old notes are still legal tender. You say the banks should stop loading the ATMs, and if we know our Nigerian banks, they will extend it to over the counter. So you don't have the new notes. The old notes are no longer usable. What exactly is going on?
Okay, this one is from Fatima. Fatima says, good morning. The CBN is not being truthful. I work in a bank and we have been begging for the new notes since December. There is a new internal policy every day while the banks are trying to deposit old bills and collect the new ones simultaneously. It was not well thought out. Thank you for your message. And let's move on to the next story. This one is coming from The Nation. Okay, let's go on to the Vanguard. Federal government orders closure of Second Niger Bridge and others for work to resume. Now, The Minister of Works and Housing, Babatunde Fashola, has ordered the closure of the second Niger Bridge and sections of other major roads that were earlier opened for the Christmas 2022 in a bid to ease traffic to now be sealed. Now, this directive was given yesterday in Abuja, and this is to ensure that work resumes from the 15th of January, I believe, at least for the second Niger Bridge.
Okay, so as you had rightly noted, the bridge was supposed to be open for 30 days, and the aim was to ease traffic around the Christmas and the New Year period. So this is in line with the initial projection that they had had. However, one of the things I think about is the bridge is practically almost completed. So what's just left are the feeder roads, the access to the highway. Now, my thinking is, how do we, because obviously the bridge has eased traffic within this period, and people would literally have to go back to using the old route, which had caused a lot of stress before that. So how do we manage that process whereby people can transit from using this new bridge to the old bridge? I would have thought that there would have been some sort of intensified action to be able to expedite action for people to be able to continue to use the bridge until those feeder roads are completed. But that's not the case. And as we see now, the whole bridge, the infrastructure, the feeder roads will most likely not be completed up until 2024, which means that the stress that people had been going through would still be what they're going through. So it would be nice to have an idea when the bridge would finally be completed. It would be nice to know what alternative routes and plans the Federal Ministry of Works and Housing has in place for people during this period.
So in other words, the bridge is not ready, but yet it has been used for campaigns. Just putting out there.
Okay, let's see. Dami from Ikorodu says, I wish this controversy over the currency redesign wasn't a story foretold. Those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Ifako says, good morning. I think we need to ask new questions on the PMS subsidy as not up to 10% quantity of PMS sold at subsidized price in Nigeria at the moment. So where is the subsidy going? This subsidy thing is quite hazy. Right, 0809 4440981. We're going to the nation. Boko Haram, a plot to destroy Nigeria, says Buhari. Now, the president described Boko Haram insurgency as a scourge and a fraudulent plot that has been designed to destabilize Nigeria. He said the gains recorded in security will not be consolidated and more attention will be given to the economy before handing over on the 29th of May. And he spoke while hosting executive members of the Catholics Bishop Conference of Nigeria in Abuja.
Okay, so very quickly, Zibby, we hear the president that Boko Haram is a plot to destroy the nation. But I dare say that what is even a bigger plot that has destroyed the nation and continues to destroy it is poor governance in competent people in positions of power and authority. Now, you say Boko Haram is trying to destroy Nigeria. You've been in power for 8 years. What have you done? In December of 2015, we were regaled with stories of how they had conquered or technically defeated Boko Haram. The following year, same story. And 8 years down the line, we're still talking about the people you defeated in 2015. So he then says, we're going to consolidate the gains in security. The big question is, what are these gains? Just on Saturday, 32 innocent Nigerians were kidnapped. We were regaled with accounts from the authorities that 5 were rescued, when in fact we now understand that their families and loved ones paid the ransom. The remaining 27 remain in captivity. Nigerians are still afraid to travel by road in multiple directions all over the country. Traveling by train is not safe. Air travel, very expensive. So where exactly are these gains in security? And if they're gains, why are they not being publicized? So the bigger question here is, it's a plot. What long-term measures have you taken? What long-term measures are in play to ensure that they do not destabilize Nigeria? And we must remember that if you're still talking about Boko Haram, you're stuck in the past because they've moved on. Boko Haram is no longer the dominant terror group in the northwest, northeast of Nigeria. It's the ISIS-backed group. and he's not making any reference to them. So the question then is, are his security reports dated? Is he receiving current real-time reports? And if he is, anytime he meets with his security chiefs, they come out, they tell you all is well, we're on top of the situation. Then within 24 hours, there's an event that gives a night to the whole charade. For how long will we continue this way? How long?
The WhatsApp number is 0809 440 981, and we're actually streaming this live on YouTube, so you can catch the live stream on YouTube. Just search for Smooth 981. Moving on to Punch, marketers predict 6-month fuel scarcity and prices are set to rise. Now, supply hitches that have been associated with the distribution of PMS may persist till June this year, according to the oil marketers. Now, the downstream oil sector has been grappling with these cases of incessant petrol scarcity in the past year. Now, the sole importer of the commodity, the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, has repeatedly complained of the enormous burden of shouldering fuel subsidies for the country.
Okay, so the marketers do believe that because the current administration has said that it plans to end the current fuel subsidy regime by June, that the fuel scarcity will end. Now, I beg to disagree for the following reasons. Up until this point in time, the NNPC remains largely the sole importer of petrol into the country. The NNPC is the only one that can access dollars at the official rate because they receive money, they receive Forex directly. Every other importer has had to stop for now because they cannot get easily dollars at the official rate. And to get it at the black market rate cripples their margins. Now, with all of that said, there's no guarantee that whoever comes in, upon seeing the books of the government, will not continue with the fuel subsidy and start a phased program. Now, if a fuel subsidy is going to be phased out, that means there'll be some form of subsidy for the rest of the year. If that is the case, and if Forex scarcity issue is not sorted out, NNPC will continue to be largely the sole importer, and if that is the case, we may still continue to experience scarcity. However, there is an interesting development. One of the indigenous oil and gas firms just last week commissioned a $1 billion storage depot, and it's located in Lagos Free Trade Zone. Now, what that does is they can receive and process and store 100 million liters of petrol in 24 hours, as against the previous turnaround time, which was spanning into multiple days. Now, if they're encouraged and they can receive vessels and reduce the congestion at the Apapa ports, then just maybe, but I'm not holding my breath out, we may still have to live with this petrol subsidy in one form or the other until the end of the year at the very earliest.
Bugbemi, do you want to add to that?
Yes, I just think really that we just need to be honest with ourselves about this fuel scarcity issue. I don't think it will be possible to immediately seize a subsidy in 6 months, because potentially that means if we look at the current price of oil and how much other countries are paying, we could go from paying 170, which is our official rate now, per liter. A lot of stations are selling for about 240, 250, to jumping to about maybe 800, 1,000 naira a liter, which we're not ready for, because the ripple effect is going to be impacted on other parts of the economy. So like Mr. C had rightly said, this is something that needs to be faced, and I'd like to see what the incoming government would like to do about it as well.
All right. Well, thank you for your messages. Thank you, Mr. C, and thank you, Bugbemi, for coming through this morning. That's it for Freshly Pressed. Do stay with us. There's a lot more to come on the Smooth Breakfast.